My name is Julio. I am 46 years old. I have been a widower for 8 years. Since then, I have lived alone in this old house, with light-colored stone walls and tall windows, high up on a hill, surrounded by vineyards that stretch for acres, like arms that envelop me and bind me to this place. This winery has been in my family for 3 generations. And even though I have sometimes thought about leaving, something inside me has always known that I don't belong anywhere else. The house itself commands respect. Its thick walls keep out the cold in summer and the heat in winter. The antique furniture still smells of waxed wood, and the steps creak as if telling secrets with every step. Everything here has a story, some happy, some not so much. The nearest town is almost 30 minutes away on a narrow road, which makes my routine peaceful, but also lonely. I wake up early, before sunrise. I like to walk among the vines when the dew still covers the leaves, and the air is cool enough to remind me that I'm alive. After breakfast, I go to the shed, check the barrels, talk to the few employees who have remained, since I decided to keep everything more intimate, more artisanal, sell less, care more. My life is made up of silent repetitions, days that look alike, and, I confess, for a long time I thought that was enough, that I had already lived what I needed to live. But lately the silence has seemed heavier, the nights longer, the wines less sweet, as if something were coming, something that doesn't have a name yet, but that I can already feel approaching, like the sound of a car on a gravel road, still distant but inevitable. Over time, my winery gained another kind of respect. Perhaps for its artisanal dedication, perhaps for the silence that surrounds it, or perhaps for the stories that the wine seems to tell on its own when it rests long enough in oak barrels and is served calmly. Without me realizing it, that place I inherited as if it were a mission or a prison came to be seen as a landmark in the region. People came, sometimes from far away, to visit the property, taste the wines, photograph the vineyards at sunset, hear about the process, and smell the must in the old cellars. Some asked me if the mansion was from the 19th century. Others praised the view of the hills or the silence that seemed to embrace visitors as soon as they arrived. Many praised the wines. Few realized that behind each bottle there was also a story of mine. A choice. A loss. I welcome chefs, sommeliers, honeymooners, wealthy people in search of authenticity. And sometimes, between one group and another, someone would arrive alone. Someone who seemed to be looking for more than wine, more than a landscape, as if searching for something they couldn't name. I smiled, offered a glass, showed them the cellar, and answered their questions. But I always kept a certain distance. It was easier that way. It was safer. Until the day I received a short, direct, almost dry email. I would like to spend a few days on the property. I am writing an article about family-owned wineries. Can I stay there? I believe your story has something I want to tell. Signed, Marco. There weren't many details, no photos. Just a name, a request, and a slight provocation. Your story has something I want to tell. It took me 2 days to reply. I said he could come, that there was a room available, and that he shouldn't expect any luxuries. He replied almost immediately. Luxury, for me, is silence and truth. His arrival was scheduled for Friday, late afternoon. I didn't know it yet, but that would be the day when everything would start to change. The car slowly drove up the gravel road. I saw him from the porch, with the sun just beginning to dip behind the hills. The golden sky and the smell of warm earth, mixed with the sweet scent of ripe grapes, created a scene that only this time of year can offer. Marco got out with a backpack on his back, and a bearing that made me look away for a moment, not out of discomfort, but out of surprise. He was handsome, very handsome. Short, brown hair, starting to turn gray at the sides, his well-groomed beard highlighted his firm chin and the tan skin of someone who doesn't spend his days locked up in an office. His smile was captivating, natural, effortless, but what caught me most was his gaze, direct, curious, full of restrained charm. His body, stocky, broad arms, strong chest under a light linen shirt. He looked more like someone who works with his hands than a journalist. Not that there's a standard for that, of course, but no one, at first glance, would say that this man wrote for magazines. There was something virile about him, something that commanded presence. "Julio?" he said, approaching and extending his hand. "Marco, welcome." His handshake was firm, warm, the kind of touch that doesn't slip away quickly. I stayed there a second longer, just on impulse. His gaze met mine, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to slow down. I took him to the guest room on the second floor of the house. He climbed the stairs, observing everything: the old floorboards, the dark wood furniture, the thin curtains, dancing in the afternoon breeze. He had the calmness of someone who was familiar with silence or who knew how to respect it. "I hope you feel at home," I said, handing him the room key. "I already do. This place has soul," he replied with that smile that always seemed on the verge of saying something more. During dinner on the porch, he spoke little. He preferred to listen. He commented on the wine with precision, but without showing off. He praised the risotto without exaggeration. He asked questions with genuine interest about the soil, the old vines, the reduced production, but what disarmed me were the silences between his sentences, the way he looked at me while I answered, as if he were paying attention to more than my words. "How long have you lived here, Julio?" "All my life." But it was only after I was widowed that I understood what it really meant to live here. He asked no more questions. He simply raised his glass to the evening, to the wine, and according to him, to the beauty of things left unsaid. We said goodbye with a calm, almost intimate good night. When he went upstairs, I heard his footsteps through the silent house. And I stood there, with the glass still warm between my fingers, wondering if that presence, unexpected, strong and beautiful, had affected me more than I was ready to admit. We woke up to clear skies and fresh air, typical of harvest mornings. The sun was not yet strong, and the golden light gave everything an almost cinematic tone. When I went downstairs, I found the kitchen table already set. Donna Lucia, the maid who has worked with me for years, had made coffee, as she always did on quiet mornings in the house. Homemade bread still warm, jams, fruit, coffee filtered through a cloth, freshly boiled milk. Everything simple but made with care. Shortly after, Marco appeared, already dressed, with his camera hanging around his neck and a calm smile on his face. "Did you sleep well?" I asked as he served himself. "Like a log, and with the best scent in the world, the smell of old wood and grapes in the air." He sat down at the table without ceremony, and we ate in silence for a few minutes, just exchanging glances and occasional observations about the day ahead. When we finished, he picked up his camera and stood up. "If you want to show me the vineyards today, I'm ready." We left soon after. The ground was still damp from the early morning dew, and the sound of our footsteps mingled with the birdsong and the distant hum of the earliest workers. Marco walked beside me, attentive to every detail: the shades of the leaves, the ripest bunches of grapes, the curves of the earth. "This place seems to live in another time," he commented, "as if nothing here is in a hurry." I just nodded. That was exactly how I felt, every day. At one point along the way, he leaned over to photograph a bunch of almost black grapes hanging too low. He lost his balance a little, slipping slightly on the loose soil. Without thinking, I reached out and held him by the waist. It was just a reflex, but my touch found firmness, a warm body under the light fabric, and when he turned to thank me, we were too close. "Thanks," he said, laughing softly, his face close to mine. I almost dropped the equipment, and my dignity too. "Good thing I managed to save both," I replied, smiling too. We stood there for a few seconds, too close for strangers, but not close enough to be awkward. He stepped back slowly, adjusted the camera around his neck, and pointed it at me. "Can I take some pictures of you?" "Of me?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, you belong here, and I think this place reveals itself more when you're in the picture." I hesitated for a second, then nodded in agreement. He asked me to stand next to a tall vine, with the light shining sideways on my face. With each click, he spoke little. He just watched. Sometimes he asked for a small adjustment. "Lift your chin. Look over there. Now stay like that, natural." But I could see it. It wasn't just technique. It was attention. Marco looked at me, as if he could see beyond what was visible. "There's something in your eyes," he commented, as he checked the photos on his camera. "As if you know more than you say. As if you're hiding a rare wine, waiting for the right moment to open it." I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. I just looked at him, and he smiled again, captivating as always. A light breeze blew between us, but inside me, the air seemed stuck. Something was changing. And it wasn't just the weather between seasons. After my shower, I went down to the living room. The house was quiet, and the sound of the television filled the room with a lightness. I sat on the sofa with a blanket thrown over my legs, pretending to pay attention to the images on the screen, but my mind was far away still, walking among the grapevines with Marco, feeling the brief touch of the morning, the light weight of his presence. That's when I saw him come in. His hair was still damp, he was wearing a dark shirt, and the camera hung from his shoulder like a natural extension of his body. "Do you have a moment to look at the photos?" he asked, stopping at the entrance to the living room, his voice low. "Yes, sure," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He came over to the sofa and sat down next to me. Not on the edge, not at a distance. He sat close, as if it were naturalist, if it had always been that way. He opened the camera and quickly scrolled through some images until he reached the ones he had taken that morning. "This one," he said, leaning in, "was my favorite." The screen lit up our faces softly, and as he showed me the photos, his face drew closer to mine without me being able to help noticing. The warmth of his body next to mine, the faint scent of soap, his calm breathing. I heard everything. I felt everything. And something inside me began to change. The desire to kiss him arose timidly, but grew quickly. It wasn't just desire. It was a strange, new, almost innocent impulse. And then, in an almost calculated gesture, Marco turned to me and kissed me. It was a calm kiss, but full of intention. Soft, warm. His lips touched mine as if testing a path. Time stood still. My body was motionless, but my heart was racing. When he pulled away, his eyes were frightened. "My God, forgive me, Julio." I raised my hand, interrupting him before he could say more. "You don't have to apologize," I said quietly. "It's okay." He looked at me for a second, trying to understand if I was serious. Then he got up slowly. "Good night," he murmured, almost like a request. And he walked to his room, slowly. I stood there for a few seconds, motionless, until I got up too. I turned off the living room light and went upstairs. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to understand what had just happened. I ran my fingers over my lips, still feeling the warmth of the kiss. I had never experienced anything like this before. I had never even imagined it. But I confess, I liked it. It took me a long time to fall asleep. I tossed and turned, my thoughts jumbled, my body restless. And even when I finally fell asleep, he was still with me. In my thoughts. The day dawned gray. The heavy sky promised rain early on, but Marco was already on the porch when I came downstairs. He was leaning against the stone wall, staring at the horizon as if talking to the weather. "Want to go for a drive before the rain hits?" I asked, not knowing exactly what to expect. He looked at me and nodded, his gaze more restrained than usual. We got into the truck. I drove in silence through the vineyards, the wet gravel crunching under the tires. The radio played softly, just to fill the air. Marco didn't say anything at first. He just watched the landscape, fidgeting with his fingers on his thigh. The tension was there, suspended in the air, like the smell of wet earth that was already beginning to rise. The rain started slowly. First light, then harder. When I realized it was going to pour, I parked the truck under a tall tree near the stone fence. We stayed there, stuck for an indefinite amount of time. That's when he broke the silence. "Julio, I wanted to apologize for last night." I looked at him. His face was serious. His breathing was noticeably shorter. He really seemed sorry, or confused, or both. I paused for a moment, then replied, looking him straight in the eye. "I don't forgive you." Marco frowned, surprised. "What?" "I don't forgive you," I repeated calmly. "You know why?" He shook his head, his eyes locked on mine. "Because I liked it." The silence grew heavier. The rain beat down hard on the hood. Marco looked at me as if he didn't know what to do with what he had just heard, so I continued. There's no need to apologize when something is good, when something is true. His eyes softened, and instead of answering, he moved closer, slowly, cautiously, and then we kissed again. This time, without fear, without guilt, without words. Just the rain around us, the smell of the earth, and the warm taste of the truth that, until yesterday, neither of us dared to face. We returned home with the sound of rain still inside us, as if it had washed away not only the earth, but also the words we couldn't say. The silence between Marco and me wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged with understanding, with a certain calm that only comes when something important has been decided, even if no one has said it out loud. The house was quiet. Donna Lucia had already left, and everything seemed in its place, but at the same time different. The kitchen retained a discreet warmth from the still warm oven. I prepared a simple dinner, as always slow-roasted meat, vegetables with fresh herbs, and a bottle of one of the oldest reds in the house, full-bodied and deep, like the night forming outside. We sat down at the table and ate without rushing. Marco spoke little, but his eyes followed me with a calmness that made me feel that, at last, I was being seen for who I was. When we finished, he got up and washed the dishes beside me. Between one gesture and another, our arms touched lightly, and I no longer knew if it was coincidence or choice, but I confess that it didn't matter. Then I went up to my room. I needed a moment to myself, or maybe just to lie down in silence. The day's fatigue weighed heavily on my body, but my heart was restless, light, and heavy at the same time. I lay down on the bed, turned off the light, and left the window ajar. The wind carried the scent of wet earth and leaves, and with it, thoughts that I couldn't yet organize. After a few minutes, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They were quiet, but they came with a kind of certainty. The door opened slowly. It was Marco. His hair was damp and he was wearing a dark shirt unbuttoned halfway down. He didn't say anything at first, he just looked at me, as if waiting for me to say something first. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice lower than normal, almost hesitant. I just nodded. And he came in. He closed the door slowly, and without much effort, lay down beside me. We stayed like that for a few seconds, just listening to our breathing, the light sound of the wind outside, and the intimate silence that was forming inside. He turned on his side, resting his hand on my chest with a lightness that pierced me. Our eyes met in the dim light, and in that moment, there were no more questions, only the certainty that it was there, in that touch, that something was beginning, that perhaps had no name, but was already too real to be ignored. We kissed. It was a deep, calm kiss, loaded with everything we hadn't said in the previous days. And then we made love without haste, without fear, like two men who weren't trying to prove anything, just allowing themselves to be. Our bodies fit together naturally, as if we had been led to that moment all along. Our hands explored new paths, our eyes remained open, attentive, and our lips met again between sighs and firm touches. It wasn't just desire, it was surrender. It was a relief. Afterwards, we lay embraced under the light sheet, our breathing slowly returning to the rhythm of the world. Marco lay down with his head on my shoulder, and I felt the warmth of his body against mine, firm, present. Outside, the sounds of the night continued, and inside the room, the silence was complete. That morning, for the first time in many years, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. And I knew that, somehow, what had been born between us in that house could no longer be undone. The day dawned slowly, with a thin mist resting on the vineyards, and the air still damp from the previous night's rain. I woke up to the soft light filtering through the curtains, and Marco's breath warming my back. He was there, quiet, with his arm around my waist, as if sleep still enveloped him, or perhaps as if he didn't want time to wake him up so early. For a few minutes I remained motionless, just listening to the sounds of the still sleeping house. Inside me, there was a strange mixture of peace and restlessness, as if something in me had finally found its place, but my mind was still searching for answers that were not urgent, just inevitable. Marco moved slowly, and I felt his body move a little closer to mine. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice hoarse, almost lazy. "Good morning." We stayed like that for a moment, without moving, as if that first dialogue of the day were also a pact of silence about everything that had happened. He then got up, slowly put on his shirt, and looked at me before leaving the room, as if asking with his eyes if everything was okay. I just smiled, and he returned that half-crooked, half-captivating smile that had stirred me in a way that was difficult to explain since the first day. I went downstairs a little later. Dona Lucia had already prepared breakfast, the table set as always, with fresh fruit, warm bread, strong coffee, and the smell of everything that reminds me of home. Marco was sitting there, leafing through his notebook, but watching me over the pages with that calm look that demanded nothing, just offered his presence. "Did you sleep well?" I asked as I sat down. "I slept well, and I woke up with the feeling that something has changed here." "Changed?" He closed his notebook, rested his elbows on the table, and looked at me calmly. "Not just here," he said, touching his chest lightly. "Here too." I was silent for a few seconds. It wasn't easy to name what I was feeling, but those words made something inside me relax. I wasn't alone in that pleasant confusion. I felt it too. I just don't know what to do with it yet. We don't have to do anything now, just feel it, and see where it goes. I nodded. There was a lightness in hearing that. A freedom that, for some reason, I didn't imagine would come after something so new. We had coffee as if we had been together for years. The conversation flowed between restrained laughter and glances that said more than words could follow. There were no promises, there were no labels. There was only that morning as simple as it was rare. And maybe that was what made it all so real. The following days passed with a gentleness I hadn't experienced in a long time. Marco was still there, present, light, with that look that seemed to pierce through layers without effort. We didn't talk about what had happened, at least not urgently. It was all there, in the gestures, in the silences, in the way our bodies sought each other without haste on the coldest nights. He was supposed to leave on a Thursday, but that morning, while we were having coffee, he looked at his cell phone, sighed, and then looked at me too, like someone who has made a decision without consulting anyone. "I postponed the trip. Just a few days," he said, as if it were nothing. I just nodded, pretending to be casual, but inside, something in me fell silent. I don't know why he decided to postpone. Maybe he didn't even know himself. All I know is that I'm enjoying it. Enjoying his company, the way he fills the spaces in the house, the way he listens to me, the way he looks at me, the way he touches me without needing words. I don't know where this will take us. And, honestly, I don't even want to think about him leaving right now. Will it last? Will it be love? I don't know. All I know is that he came. And, in some way I don't quite understand, he came to fill something that had been missing in me for a long time. So, while he's here, that's what I'm going to do. Enjoy it. Every minute, every silence, every kiss, every look. And if you want to know how our story unfolds, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment below what you think. From the bottom of my heart, I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed sharing this with you. With love, Julio.